Good morning, and welcome to Caretakers Corner, where we discuss everything that has to do with taking care of your elderly disabled parents, disabled spouses, and adult disabled children. My name is CJ, and I am your guide on this journey. And today, we are going to be talking about things, and this is more not necessarily for caretakers, but for those that we are taking care of. And we are going to discuss things that we would like to say but don't because we want to avoid a fight. So, as caretakers, there are times that we are treading a fine line when it comes to those that we take care of. They can be very emotional sometimes. Sometimes they suffer from dementia and don't necessarily understand everything and tend to take things really personally. They can be on a lot of medicines, and this can also cause them to take things extremely personally. Or, like in the case of Barbara, sometimes because of her medicine, she doesn't necessarily understand exactly what I'm saying. Like something that before the medicine she would have understood perfectly, she doesn't necessarily understand, and she doesn't necessarily catch the cues, verbal, emotional, voice inflections and all that. So we tend to walk this very, very fine line, and we tend to hold things in that we just want to get out and say. They're not mean things. The last video, I didn't post one last week, but the video before that I posted was on things that was on us being angry over stuff and not wanting to say things that would totally F up the whole situation. This is just on things we'd like to say because they probably do need to be said at some point, but we don't, just to avoid a fight. So I'm going to start with the number one situation is when we get frustrated, they tend to take it personally. They're like, oh, I'm sorry, you're frustrated with me, I've done something, and you just want to scream at them, I'm not frustrated with you. I'm frustrated at the situation. There was one morning I got up and I was running late. Not Barbara's fault. I've been doing a lot of extra stuff. We're doing a lot of overtime at work right now, and then we've got the renovations going on, and we had a lot of extra work we had to do with that. So I was just tired. I woke up late, and I was dropping everything. And I drink beet juice. Now, I drop my beet juice, and you can't just stop and let that, you can't just go on. You have to literally stop and clean that up immediately, or it will stain everything it touched. So I was starting to get frustrated, and Barbara was like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. I was like, this has nothing to do with you. I am not frustrated with you. I am not upset. You've done nothing wrong. It's all on me in this case. But sometimes it's just a situation. Sometimes it's stuff that has nothing to do with us, but it is causing us to be frustrated. And sometimes our loved ones want to take that personally. They think they're the source of our frustration. And I know there have been times Barbara starts apologizing and all that. It's like, this has nothing to do with you. So that is like one of my big ones, It's like, I'm not frustrated with you. I love you. You've done nothing wrong. Just sit back and relax. Another one that I think is very important, and there are times we just need to look up and say, I'm done. We're doing this. And that's like going to the doctor. Sometimes, I don't really have this problem with Barbara, but I know a lot of the folks that I've come in contact with that watch this channel have had this problem. And I know when you're dealing specifically with elderly individuals, men particularly, and younger disabled individuals, this can be an issue. And that is going to the doctor when there is a problem that has developed. Now, in the elderly, if they get something as simple as a UTI, which can be fixed with drinking a lot of water and taking antibiotics, you still have to go to the doctor for that. They can start to become combative, and then they don't want to go to the doctor. And then in younger individuals, they're all upset that they're younger and disabled and have all these problems, health problems. The last thing they want is more health problems. And so sometimes you just want to scream, go to the doctor. If you're not willing to do it for yourself, go for me. And they don't realize that by not going to the doctor, they're adding way more stress on us, because now we have not only the regular stuff that we're dealing with, almost slipped there, but we also have all of the new symptoms. And those new symptoms are not only making the situation worse, but they can be making the mental and emotional situation worse, because with older people, they can become combative when they get a UTI, not realizing it, because it does affect their emotional state and mental state. So you just want to scream, if you're not willing to go for yourself, go for me. You talk about wanting to make things easier on me, and going to the doctor right now would make this a lot easier. But once again, and here's a very important fact some folks recently discovered that I've come in contact with, that have talked to me. You cannot make somebody go to the hospital. You cannot make somebody take their medicine. And you cannot make somebody see a doctor, or, you can't make them eat. And it's not that you can't try. You can't suggest it, which is where this whole video comes into play. You can suggest it. You can ask and you can beg, but you cannot make. It's actually against the law. And unless you have power of attorney and they have been deemed mentally unfit, you cannot make them. Even if you take them to a hospital or a nursing facility, you cannot make them. If an ambulance shows up because you've called them, the ambulance cannot make them go to a hospital if they are deemed to be of being in their right mind. And they ask a lot of questions to be able to verify that they are at least in their right mind at that moment. So that is frustrating, because as caretakers, we know they need help. We know they need to go see the doctor, or they need to go to the ER. They don't want to go. We cannot force them to, and neither can the medical community. It's against the law. And our hands are tied. So all we can do at this point is beg them to flip and go to the hospital. So that's a big one. I've noticed a lot of my friends and folks in the community have been dealing with a lot lately, actually. And I think that's one of the biggest ones I want to scream sometimes at people. I don't have that problem here usually. With Barbara, I usually can talk to her logically about it. I have that problem with my mom. Now, she's good about going to her regular doctors and all that. But like when we were moving her out to the house, the last day that we were doing the move, so we were trying to load everything up and get out. It was late at night. It had been a really long day. And it was dark outside. And she had walked to her vehicle. Well, we were going to stop to get gas, and I was driving. And I'd pulled up behind her, and she motioned for me to come over. And I walk over. It's dark. I can see on her face there is something wrong with her face. Like, I don't know what's going on, but like there is something physically wrong with her face. And I knew she had just taken some medicine, so I was worried she was having a bad reaction to some new medicine because she was going to have eye surgery. And she had just started this medicine. She turned the lights on. Half of her face is black and blue and swollen to hell and back. And I'm like, oh, damn, what has happened? And I'm still thinking a reaction to the medicine. No, she had fallen between her door and her car door. And she had hit her face, broke her glasses. I mean, it was bad. And I'm like, okay, we need to go to the hospital and have you looked at. And she absolutely refused. Could not get her to go to the hospital. It was months before all that healed up. Luckily, nothing was broken, but it still took months. They were thinking about having it. She was going to have to go to a surgeon to get all the fluid off of her eye. And then I go into the house the other day. Same eye. She's blacked it again. I'm like, well, what did you do? She goes, I walked into a door. How? And I'd be upset, but she'd already gone to see her doctor for something else, so she'd been looked at. It was fine, but yeah, you just can't make them, and you want to scream. I was terrified in that moment, and I know I have a buddy. He is terrified at a moment. I have a friend. She was terrified at that moment. I mean, it is scary, and sometimes you really want to just scream, would you do it for me if you won't do it for you? All right, so the other one, and this used to be a situation in the beginning of Barb's disability. We no longer have this problem because we've had a lot of fights over it. Not like blowout fights, because we don't really blowout fight, but we had a lot of fights over it. And now there's an understanding. But as caretakers, we work really hard. Even if we don't have an outside job, caretaking is difficult. It is physically exerting on our bodies. And a lot of us aren't getting any younger. I hate to say this. I am going to live to be 900 years old. But there are days that my body hurts because I also do have an outside job. And I do a lot of work around the house. So there was a time when I was a lot bigger. I've lost a lot of weight. And it's made a big difference on my joints and everything. But I still have a lot of back pain and problems like that. And so I would come home and I'd be hurting and everything. And I would talk about how much pain I was in. And I would get, well, you don't really know what pain is because you don't know what kind of pain I'm in. I'm in serious pain. And so I just wanted to scream. And I finally, one day I did. I said, look, I know you're in pain. I know you hurt. I know it's part of your condition. But that doesn't make my pain, my physical pain, any less severe for me just because you hurt worse. I mean, let's not compare this. And it created a lot of fights because there'd be days like, especially when I first started working at my job. I work in a factory 11 years ago, where I went from being in a desk job to working in a factory. It took a toll on you. You go from sitting all day to standing all day. It's difficult. And so back then we had a lot of fights over that. Disagreements, like I said. We don't really have fights, but I did want to scream, look, I am really hurting. And I realize it may not be anything compared to your pain, but it's still very painful for me. And I've talked to a lot of my buddies at work and everything, and they've got that very similar situation. They just want to scream. I know it may not be your pain level, but I am still very much pained. And of course, the older we get, the more pains we have too. And I've got several people that I got one lady that she's really, really tall. So like her leg joints and everything are affected a lot more on things, and they can cause her a lot of pain. And she's a caretaker to her mom. And so I could see that. I refer to a lot of people at my job because we have very demanding jobs, and they take a toll on your body. And then on top of that, we're doing all this overtime. Then you go home and you do your caretaking duties at home. And some of them, they don't know what situation they're going home to. They may get a call saying, oh, well, we got a bad situation. You need to come home as soon as you get off work. Some of them have to leave early to be able to go home and take care of the situation. So we understand as your caretaker, trust me, we understand that you are in pain, that you are not in good shape. We understand it. We also understand that your doctors have given you a lot of medicine to take care of all that. And most of us are using over-the-counter drugs, or not even that. We're just dealing with it. But that doesn't mean that our pain, our physical pain, is any less to us than your pain is to you. And if we come home and we can barely move, then we're in pain. We're still going to take care of you. It might be slower. We might not be as fast, and we might complain about the fact we hurt. What we need from you in this instance is for you to be understanding that as caretakers, as your caretaker, we are currently not up to par. We don't need you to go, oh, well, you don't know what real pain is. We do not need you to demean our pain. We need you to be accepting of our pain and to understand that we are still going to do what we do because we love you. So I hope as caretakers, this resonates with you. And if there's anything else that you feel that you would love to be able to say, put it down in the comments, because I guarantee there's somebody else out there that feels the same way. And you help them to feel validated in those feelings. Because these are things that we feel guilty about wanting to say. And we shouldn't. These are things that we actually need to say. We need to say it in a nice, positive way. But these are things that we really do need to say. We need to get out there. We need to let them know this is how we feel. Caretaking is a actual two-way street. There's at least two people involved. The caretaker and the loved one. And when at all possible, we need to work together to make the whole situation better. And by communicating, that is how that is one way that we can make everything go better and go smoother. So I hope this helped. I hope you like, subscribe, and share. And like I said, stick that in the comments. If there's anything you'd like me to talk about, stick it in the comments. Have a wonderful day. Love you guys, and I'll see you back here next Sunday.